Hi, good day. This video is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. Once again, good day. We are Group 3. I am Engine Cadet Roma Clark Matthew, together with my group mates, Engine Cadet William Butantan, Engine Cadet Israel Esquadro, Engine Cadet Joseph Manaiton, Engine Cadet Keith Ortega, Engine Cadet Pacifico Jetro, Engine Cadet Sakul Banhan, and Engine Cadet Vergara John Camilo. Our topic for today is all about food security. So, the objectives are to identify the factors leading to global food security and examine the state of the Philippines in terms of food security during pandemic. Identify the five components of food security. Identify the threats to global food security and identify the food security if possible. Next, please. So, first, what is food security? Food security is the measure of an individual's ability to access food that is nutritious and sufficient in quantity. Food security specifies that food must also meet an individual's food preferences and a dietary needs to active and healthy lifestyle. So, as a person who is conscious to what I eat in every meal, uh, I always choose the food that has more nutrients since I go to the gym to make my body stronger. So I prefer to choose or I prefer to eat more vegetables and more nutrients. And dietary needs that food that I take, and also I choose the food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle. Next, please. So, factors leading to global food security. So, number one is climate change. Number two is technology. Three is loss of biodiversity. Number four is conflict. Number five is poverty. Number six is unemployment. Number seven is water stress. And number eight is population growth. So, first, let's go to climate change. Next, please. So, climate change. The researchers in the Philippines found that significantly increased or unstable rainfall or extremely cold and extremely hot temperatures would likely lead to increased vulnerability to food insecurity and malnourished children. However, however, provided that rainfall does not increase or decrease by more than 10%, vulnerability to malnutrition will be reduced. Similarly, if temperatures increase by 1 degree, crop farming income increase and then vulnerability is reduced. After years of stagnation, the number of hungry people in the world rose between 2015 and 2018 by nearly 40 million people, with the greatest rise coming in drought affected countries. So, in this case, for me, there are both beneficial and unbeneficial. So, for example, if the weather of the temperature is cold, so it means it's rainy season. So, some of the farmers will benefit because there are some vegetables that are applicable to in cold season. Like for example, cucumbers, cucumber, tomato, carrots, okra, and etc. So some of the vegetables applica- that are applicable in cold season will be affected in if the weather will changes to hot season. Like in hot season, there are vegetables that will be bloom like corn, like kamote, like no, etc. Basta like there will be there will be vegetables that will that will be bloom if there are hot season. Next, please. So in technology can support improve the amount of food available, effective harvest and post-harvest practices to minimize food loss, effective storage and conservation practices to increase the value of harvested products, identification and high value added products to improve economic gains for processors and ensure long shelf life and enhance marketing of available foodstuffs at competitive prices based on effective global marketing strategies in
It's 11
in
o'clock.
food security. Technology offers a chance to make our food system more resilient and more sustainable and better for both people and planet. Also, it is also likely that scaling of food characterize or scaling of food using technologies will create a new economic opportunities while reducing a negative economic environmental externalities. So there are good and bad effects using technology in food security. Next, please. So loss of biodiversity. The rate in loss of biodiversity is alarming and concern the entire humanity. Humans are dependent on biodiversity and ecosystem services it provides to meet their basic needs. Yet, while crop and livestock agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and agriculture are made up and rely on a complex web of living organisms, and they have become one of the major drivers of biodiversity loss. So, the loss of biodiversity are caused by humans. Like, for example, they're always having deforestation, building some factories, improper disposal of waste products, and also having illegal fishing. So the loss of biodiversity, like livestock, it it affects it affects because of the the humans act like they are very irresponsible in terms of using using or building something that can affect the biodiversity. So next, please. So conflict. Warring parties may plunder an enemy's food supply, deliberately destroying farms, livestock, and other civilian infrastructures. Conflict can cause food shortage and severe disruption of economic activities, threatening the means of survival of entire population and entire world. So the loss of the loss of livestock during conflict severely affects the farmers engaged in the food supply. Like for example, in Russia and Ukraine, some markets are limited in terms of buying products in market. So like they're in public markets, there are shortage of buying supplies. So some people are not are not gonna some people are not buying the products because they are very high in price because of the war. And also in the Philippines during the Marawi surge because of the group between Maute and the governments. Some of the some of the foods are limited, and also the farmers are affected because the rebels will go to the mountains, and also the fishermen are also affected because some of the rebels will go to the sea. So there is so strict in terms of securing people because the war is so very broad during that time, and the food are very limited to distribute in each province. So next please. So next is poverty. Reducing poverty is a key element in the policy of food security because poor people spend such a large share of their incomes on food, leaving them vulnerable to high food prices, and many poor people obtain much of their income from farming, leaving them vulnerable to declines in agricultural output. So we all know that here in the Philippines, some people are experiencing poverty. They are very poor and they only eat once in a meal. So a lot of people are having tough times during during feeding their families to eat because of the pandemic. A lot of people having no work during because of the COVID-19. So some some of the governments give them give supplies to the people all over the country to feed the family. So the poverty is one of the root cause in terms of food security. So to continue this report, I would like to call on Engine Cadet Poy Vergara. Thank you.
So thank you, Engine Cadet Roma. So I'm here to proceed about the discussion of Engine Cadet Roma about the factors leading global food security. So for me, it is one of that is unemployment because it can have a negative impact on families' food security because high employment rates among low-income people makes meeting basic household foods needs more difficult because unemployment equals to low income or no income at all. So with you with the people with low income can cause difficulty on food security to buy food. So because of that, they have an option. One option that is unhealthy food. So because of unhealthy food, it can cause malnutrition. So unemployment is also one factors of food security unless you unless your plants you have a plants or you have raised animals, so it's not difficult to have a food. But the next thing if you have plants and animals, so the next factor of food security is water stress. So crops and livestock both requires water to strive. When water supplies runs out, people can't drink, wash, or feed the crops or the animals, and the economy will suffer. So water crisis is a huge impact on food production, as you know, as we all know. So without water, people do not have means of watering their crops and to provide food for the community. So that's also the factors of global food security. So the last factor of for me the last factor of global food security is population growth because a growing population means more mouth to feed, as we know, right? In the Philippines, there's a lot of poverty because of the growing population. Because of the growing population, so a lot of mouth to feed. So there's what you call this food high demands of food because rapid population growth makes it difficult to expand food production and consumption. She say it it's difficult to expand food production. So when you it's difficult to expand the food production and consumption. So it higher the demand and higher the prices of the food. So it can cause envir- rural poverty. So and also increase that food demand. So when increased food demand, it's higher the food prices. It potentially catastrophic food shortage. So that's also the problem of the global. That's also the factors of global global food security. So for my next report, this is about the state of the Philippines in terms of food security during the pandemic. So the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, or also called FAO, noted that the COVID-19 pandemic is disrupting the food system worldwide, particularly those in the developing countries like the Philippines. So, according to report of Marijo S. Ramos from the Philippines, pandemics weaken the food security in the Philippines due, due to the pandemic, due to the lockdowns. Because of the risk of spreading the virus, the people were panicking without the access of food were when the lockdown started. So because of the panicking, they have a panic buying. Because of that, it limits the food and the supply of food and creates higher demand, leading to higher prices. Example for noodles, canned goods, rice. So that is the problem of the state of the Philippines during the pandemic. The food security was disrupting. So first is disrupting food system. So some people who have not regular have who have not regular livelihood are affected it because of the lockdowns and quarantines. Because of that, for example of this is the vendors, because the vendors to prevent spreading the risk of infecting about the COVID-19, it's easy to, so they have to go they have to be isolated so that the virus cannot be spread. So because of and they don't have a regular source of food, so that is the one of disrupting the food system of the Philippines. So because of some people who do not have regular livelihood and affected it because of the lockdowns. So and next is the unhealthy food option. because of because of there is no source of income during the lockdowns. Most of the people, they choose more often to buy cheap foods, but unhealthy food option, but also an unhealthy food option, because of option like example canned goods, instant noodles. They may not able be to maintain their proper nutrition and have a high risk to be affected by the virus. So the next problem is the obese adults. Because of home quarantines, some adults don't have proper exercise and also have an unhealthy food that can cause obesity. Like what the example of the unhealthy food option. Because the people prefer to buy canned goods, instant noodles. So, but because of that, there's a solution for the government, that is called ayuda. Because the less income due to the non-work no pay policy due to the pandemic, where we are unable to ensure the food or unhealthy foods the the family. So a temporary solution by the government is to give to the people, and that is the ayuda. And that's all for my report. So thank you.
Okay, good day. I am Engine Cadet Ortega QP. So, for the continuation of the reports about food security, so let's talk about the five components of food security. So first is let's talk about food security. So what is food security? So according to FEO, which provide this and well accepted definition of a state of food security. So food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient and safe and nutritious food which meets their dietary needs and food preference for an active and healthy life. So the first component in the food security is availability of food. Availability is one of the component of food security, and it is addresses the supply aside. So the praise refers to the physical inflow and preference of safe, nutritious food at a given time and in a given place. So example are the local markets or in a country. So are the example of availability of food in a local market. So access to food. So access, one of the components of the food security. So concerns itself whether or not an individual or household it is able to gain access to the and therefore to eat available food. Dapat uh, dapat good access sa food to to eat or to gain access for the availability of food. So it addresses the ability to purchase or to exchange goods for foods as well as foods that are given in another social mechanism that affects access. Example is that affects access is the unequal distribution of food among the members of the households. So next component is the utilization of food. So utilization is one of the components of the food security. It addresses the body ability to make it the most out of the nutrients in a food that is consumed. Utilization of food can be affected by the factors such as for storage, spoilage, cooking practices, wasting foods like mga sobra-sobra, and food safety and diseases, which is such as worms or HIV or AIDS that might affect the sufficient consumption and digestion of food. So that's all for me for the continuation of the 5 components of food security. We call Engine Cadet Squadron. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I'm Engine Cadet Squadron SRA, and today I'm going to discuss and explain about the third, the fourth, and the fifth components of a global food security. So before we proceed for the components, let's review about the global security. So, what is global security? It means it refers to the condition in which all people at all times have physical and economic access to have sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So, in short, global food security ensures the food to be safe, healthy, and sufficient for the people. And it really helps to enhance the productivity and consequently the production of the food in order to produce and generate more food supply to meet their dietary needs and food preferences. It assists in providing opportunities for income generation, and it also generally provides improvement of nutritional advice through home economics programs and enhances the quality of rural life by way of community development. So now let's proceed to the third components of the global security, which is the utilization of food. So It is one of the four components of food security. It addresses the body's ability to make the most out of the nutrients in the food that is consumed. Utilization of food can be affected by the factors such as a poor storage, if we have a small or area of the storage, and the next is spoilage. One great example for this is we have fruits or meats that is already spoiled and not already consumed. Next is the cooking practices. So cooking practices, if we cook food, we must cook food that is just intended for our needs. And then food safety and disease. So in order to avoid disease, we must secure our food in a safety areas. So because example of disease such as worms or HIV or AIDS that might affect sufficient consumption and digestion of food. So in terms from the word utilization of food, so utilization of food is about to the body uses the various nutrition in food, because person's health, feeding practices, food preparation, diversity of their diet, and intra-household distribution of food are all affect a person's nutrition status. So from the word utilization itself means how we utilize his food, how we consume foods effectively. And good example, or for example, is when we cook food. Yes, when we must cook food that is intended for our need and wants to eat, and we must not cook food too much that ends up to spoiled food. And when we cook food, we must cook nutritious food in order to attain the necessities of our body to be healthy. So in that way we already utilize his food. And the third or the next components of global food security is the stability. So stability is one of the four components also of the food, that it cuts across and affects all the other components. Food may be available and accessible to people who are able to utilize it effectively, but this state of affairs needs to be enduring and so stable over time, rather than being a temporary state that is subject to fluctuations. So it means the availability of food over a period of time. So that's why in order to achieve the food security, technical and human resources are necessary and really needed to guarantee the food stability. Good example for this, especially in our country, the government should help and provide assistance for our beloved farmers and in agricultural sector for them to be productive and to produce stable and sufficient food. With that, our country have stability of food, so there is no need for us to import foods coming from other country, because to be food secure, a population, household, or individual must have access to adequate food at all times. And the fifth or the last components of the global food security is the malnutrition. Malnutrition undermines a person's ability to lead a healthy life and occurs when a person is not able to obtain the right variety of nutrients in the right amount from their diet. It is an umbrella term that includes overnutrition, or it means an excess of food energy. And undernutrition, that means that a lack of food energy and micronutrients such as protein. And micronutrient deficiency means insufficient macronutrients such as iron, vitamin A, or iodine, or any kinds of nutrients. means not having access to a reliable and nutritiously well balanced food supply. Considering purchasing power and physical availability, and it has imbalance or lack of nutrients. It's either as a result of poor diet or problems absorbing nutrients from food. And this also happens when there is a negative effect or changes on other components of global food security. So that is why these five components of global food security needs to be balanced and well monitored in order to have a global food secured country. That's all for my report.
Sirs, so my topic for today is threats to global food security. So first is the food issues. So the food safety, declining wild fish stocks, poor aquaculture practices, genetically modified crops, exploitation of workers, lack of equal access, not enough people engaged in agriculture, and monocrops. So next is climate change. The researchers in the Philippines found that significantly increased or unstable rainfall or extremely cold or extremely hot temperatures would likely lead to increased vulnerability to food insecurity and malnourished children. So the researchers in our country found out in the research that rapid changes of temperature can cause vulnerability to the agriculture. Next is genetic engineering. Genetic modified crops could contribute to food production increases and higher food availability. There may also be impacts on food quality and nutrient composition. Example, the chicken. So they will inject something in the chicken in the breast, and then the chicken will grow. Example, 40 days or 2 months. So they can already sell it because of the injection that they put. Next is aging farmers. Today in our country, the farmers are very poor because of lack of education about farming and lack of technology. Needed effort or force to exert in order to plant vegetables or um, fruits. So time passes, people get older, and when people grows old, we will get weaker. Being a farmer, it needs enough strength to execute proper agricultural work. So, to this generation, a lot of people from provinces went to city to find better jobs, and because of that, we lack young farmers. And if we lack young farmers, it can affect to the production of our goods. So, we need to encourage the youth and our government to work together and to enhance farming techniques and technology. Next is land development. Investors claim that land grabs can help alleviate the world food crisis by tapping into a country's unused agricultural potential. But such investments often do more harm than good, disrupting traditional land use and leaving half a billion family farmers vulnerable to exploitation. So, example, there is a very huge vacant land in the mountainous part in our place, and then there's a company that called land developer. So they will build a housing over there, and so that space cannot be used anymore in to grow crops. So it can cause less it can cause more vulnerable to our farmers because of the space being um, built by different kinds of buildings, especially the villages and
Thank you, Engine Cadet Madaiton, and good day, everyone. I'm Engine Cadet Butantan for the continuation of threats to global food security. So the next threat is massive bee dies off. So how do bees be a threat if they will die massively? It is because if massive bees dies, we may lose all the plants that bees pollinate, all of the animals that eat those plants, and so on up the food chain, which means a world without bees could struggle to sustain the global human population of 7 billion. Our supermarkets would have half the amount of fruit and vegetables. So I know that some of you will still question it. But let me tell you something. There are some flowers, vegetables, or plants that only the bees can spread without sacrificing the plant or killing the plant just to get the seed. So therefore, bees has a great impact in spreading the plants. So that's why the bees are threats, or to be specific, if massive bees dies. So the next threat is soil erosion. Soil erosion inhibits our ability to grow nutritious food by decreasing the nutrients available to plants as well as the space for them to put down roots. Soil erosion can decrease crop yields by up to 50%. In addition, crops do grow tend to be of a lower quality, misshapen, smaller, and less nutritious. So how it become a threat? Because if this will all happen, the supply for our food will also be lessened. And if the supply will be lessened and the demand will go high, the price of our food will be much more higher than before. And in addition, the crop that we will harvest will become lower quality, and some will be junk after we harvest it because of lack of nutrients. So that is why it is a threat. So the next threat is world population. Increasing numbers of people often drive up demand for food, which typically results in additional use of arable land and water. So how it become a threat to global food security? So let me elaborate it for you. If our population will go high, it only be safe to assume that more buyers of food, and if the demand of food will rise up, it is also safe to assume that the farmers or the suppliers will find a way to cover the needs of his buyers. But this is where the problem will come, because the goods will not grow overnight. It takes time to grow, but because of the population, the harvested goods will not be enough, and the supply will be gone in no time, because there are a lot of people to be supplied, and it will become food shortage. Thank you.
So hi guys, so after my group is talk about the factors leading to global food security and the state of the Philippines during the pandemic food security, and also the components of food security and the threats to global food security. So I'm going to talk about the last report, which is food security possible? So I'm Angel Cadet Pacifico. So we go on to the next slide. So next slide is what is food security? So food security is defined by the United Nations Committees on Food. World food security means that all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preference and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. So next slide. So how to improve access to sufficient, safe, healthy, and sustainable food, or is food security possible? So here are the next slide. So we empower residents to grow food in urban. So urban agriculture is another example of food sources particularly relevant in the industrial legacy cities that is constitute an opportunity to put vacant land back into productive use and foster neighborhood redevelopment. So for example, if here in Cebu City, beside the CCMC, there is a vacant land. So while it is not in use, we have to use it to farm, to make a greenhouse, or to make the use of the land to be efficient. So because with the growing population and massive urbanization, fertile lands are diminishing every day. Urban farming is probably the solution for efficiently using the land available for feeding people. And also the example is the rooftop gardening. It will not only take a minimal space but also provide tons of fresh produce. Then also the vertical gardening. Next slide. Incentivize the donation of edible food. So, donating the needy is a great way to improve the condition in your neighborhood or community. Donating food to the worthy people or organization helps counter poverty, hunger, and at the same time, it can improve harmony, friendliness, and trust among the residents. The next slide is so food support business model that generate employment opportunity. To address food insecurity holistically, local government must solve food poverty challenges. So one of the avenue is to use a city's food rate as a tool to generate employment opportunities in food insecure areas. So that strategy supports the creation of composting location led by community partners to increase opportunities for development. Research has shown that on a per ton basis, composting sustains 2 to 4 times the number of jobs as landfill or incinerator disposal. The next slide is increase yield through sustainable farming. So sustainable farming is a viable and has the potential to increase yield and feed a growing population without destroying living conditions. Implementing this kind of farming requires a growing awareness of sustainability among policymakers, producers, and consumers. So, thank you. That is for my report.
Good day everyone. I'm Engine Cadet Sakol Giovanni will continue discuss about food security is possible. Food security possible in our globalization, mostly in our country, Philippines. Food security goes beyond increased food productions. It involves enhancing the competitiveness of economies, agriculture and fisheries, and fair policies that promote sustainability and growth among the stakeholders, particularly smallholders such as women sellers, farmers, and fishermen, and others who sell foods in our country. Attaining and sustaining food security for everyone is not an easy task. The world needs motivated individuals to help provide solutions to the difficult problems that society faces to be food secure. And for that, in our world food prize, there are some outstanding individuals who have made vital contributions to improving the quality or availability of food throughout the world. These individuals have made contributions in any field involving world food supply, including agriculture, science and technology, manufacturing, marketing, nutrition, economics, poverty alleviation, political leadership, and the social sciences. Those individuals has a biggest impact in our food security. It helps to control our foods and the agriculture and to support when there's a climate change happen in our globalization. So I will discuss in the food economy in our country, in the Philippines. The economy of the Philippines is heavily dependent on agriculture. Most of what constitutes food security in the country depends on the agriculture sector. Therefore, challenges faced by Filipino farmers and fishermen often have the detrimental effect on food security in the country. The challenge posed for these aspects of food security in the Philippines is income. In a country with the highest food prices in the region, only those who have sufficient income will be able to afford nutritious foods. Those with lower incomes will have to settle for something less costly or sometimes with nothing at all. So here are some advantages if food security is possible. Food security means people have enough nourishment every day to remain healthy and active. That's enough nutrition every day. Not just some days or most days, and it's enough nutrition for them and everyone they are responsible for. Food security means people can start long-term activities without having to interrupt them to find food. They can plant crops, they won't be harvested for months, they can spend extended time developing skills, they can invent labor-saving devices, they can invest, they can educate themselves and their dependents, they can hire employees and organize their work. Food security is based on which the whole pyramid of improving human welfare is built. Where whole societies lack food security, there is general poverty and stagnation. In society which shouldn't lack of food security, that society loses the productive contributions of the food insecure individuals who are food insecure lose the opportunity for a better life. Those around the food insecure are often less secure because hungry people become desperate people. Food security not only carries significant benefits for human health, but also serves as the basis to achieve sustained economic growth. For this reason, it's essential that we understand that a food security strategy needs to be seen as more than a single sector. It requires a combination of coordinated actions and various sectors we are taking about finance, agriculture, health and nutrition, and infrastructure and others. And that would be all. Thank you.